Knowledge is power. Make an impact by learning more. Call us right now for more help at 866-945-8070. Track customers, projects, and tasks with Airtable. Now we've got a lot to do, and I want to keep this video reasonably short, so I'm going to dive right in. First, what you're looking at here is not Airtable, you're looking at Dynalist. Dynalist is the way to organize the tables that we want to create for this Airtable base. They call it a base in Airtable. And the challenge with doing something like this, and this was brought to me by actually an old high school friend, guy's name is John. Hey, John. And he said he's started using Airtable, but they're basically just using it as a spreadsheet. And I get that because I've seen it, and I've worked with a number of people who started out with Airtable the same way. And this is the answer. With Airtable, the way it's designed is it's designed to work like a database, which means we need to break things up into appropriate lists in Airtable. Anything where we'd want to be able to describe detailed information about that thing, we want a separate table for it, such as customers, staff, projects, and tasks. Those are the main tables that we want to create in this base. So that's how we want it broken up. So if you're sitting there creating just this long task list, and every time you have another task for a different customer or a different project, you're just copying or repeating the customer and the project, that's probably a good sign that what you really want to be doing is breaking those up into separate tables. And then we're going to link things together. That's what makes Airtable so powerful. So I encourage you to take the time to plan it like I did here and outline what sort of fields you need to create within each table within the base, because there's a lot of dumb little things that, as I was working on this and sort of playing with it and seeing how I'd want to lay it out, I realized that, the order matters in some cases. And there are things like when I get down to the task, I hadn't considered that I would want to have the customer in there and the project. I needed to know what project and customer that task goes with. But projects and customers are each their own separate database. So they're linked. And then I said, well, wait a minute. Why would I need to create extra work? Once I've picked the project that the task goes with, I can look up what customer that project is associated with, because that's going to come from this table here. So when you start digging in and planning, you start figuring out not just what you need to lay out, but the order in which it needs to be laid out. So I want to pick the project first and then have it look up the customer based on that. So, and Dynalist, as you can see, makes it really easy to kind of move these things around and make sure that you've got them set up the way you want them. So I'm going to bring this over to my other screen here so I can focus, and we're going to build this in Airtable. So I've already created a base, as you can see, that's called Track Customers, Projects, and Tasks with Airtable. Now, when you start a brand new base and you do it from scratch, it starts you off with 3 columns. This first column is the primary column. It's a little more limited than any other column in terms of the things you can do with it. And the idea of this primary column, if you understand databases, if you have any experience with things like Microsoft Access or FileMaker Pro, this is normally designed to be, it should be unique, it should be different on every row, and it should never really be repeated. Airtable lets you repeat things, but that's the idea behind it, is it's supposed to be a unique descriptor, because as you're going to see when we start linking from one table to another, it's this column that it's going to pull from in the link. So it's important to understand exactly how this works. Now I'm going to delete these other 2 columns, even though I'm probably going to reintroduce some version of them later on. I just want to start with a completely blank slate. So this first one is going to be, let's just call it the company name, because hopefully we don't end up working with more than 2 companies with the same exact name, right? And then the next thing we're going to do is a contact name. And as you can see, these are single line text. When you create a new column in an Airtable base, this is where you choose the type. And as you can see, there's many different types, and we're going to use a few different ones. But for this kind of stuff, single line text is fine. Before I forget, let's double click this here so it's not called Table 1. This is going to be called Customers. Okay, now going down my list, the next thing we need is email. And for this, we do have a field type specifically for email. Okay, then we have the phone, and again we do have a field type specifically for phone numbers. Okay, and then we're going to have the address and the city and the state, because this is going to become your kind of master customer list, or it can be. City, state, zip, and then referred by. Okay, and this we could turn into a drop-down later on if we have a list of common referral sources. You might even have two versions of this, like I would. One for the if there was a person or entity or company that made the referral. Another for if I want to track how they found me through social media, right? Where the choices would be like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. How did they find me? So that's pretty good for the customer list. Let's go in and create the staff list. And I know I'm moving fast, so by all means, please pause the video and open up your own Airtable account and start building what I've built. Pause the video, get this far in, and then move on, or resume the video to go on to the next part. Next part is we're going to create the staff. So create an empty table. We'll call it staff. Again, I'm going to delete these extra fields. Okay, and so staff, we're going to start off with a name. Okay, and then headshot. You're going to see what this is all about. This is going to be an attachment. Then we have title or role. And then we have email. Phone. And it's handy to have this information at your fingertips, even though you probably have a CRM or something like that with this kind of information. It's just handy to have it here. That's good. Then we need city, state, and zip again. Okay, and then we need the type. Now here we're going to go straight to creating a drop-down. It's going to be a single select drop-down. And for type we want W-2, which are employees, and 1099. And if you have a premium account with Airtable, you can pick the colors. Make it look prettier. Okay, and that does it for staff. Again, if you haven't already, pause the video, get caught up. Make sure you've got a customers table and a staff table that looks exactly like mine does. Next, we're going to do projects. Now, here we're going to do something a little different. Actually, I take that back. Here we're going to do something pretty straightforward. It's in the next table that we're going to do something a little different. So, the first one is going to be the project name. Okay, and then here we want a start date. And of course we have date-based fields. And I want a due date. Okay, and now here we want the customer, right? But I'm not going to re-enter the customer. I want it linked. So this is where you start to this very moment here. And this is where definitely, if you haven't paused and caught up, pause and catch up right here, because this is where you start to see exactly what the power of Airtable really can be. This is where I get to link to another record, and it's so easy to do. In Access and FileMaker, you used to have to write functions and things to get this kind of stuff to happen. Here, it's so easy. So I'm going to say link to another record, and I want to take it from the customers table. Okay, and I'm not going to allow linking to multiple records. I'm going to say save. And we'll come back and we'll start doing the data entry and you'll see. But essentially this means I can get access to a list of what I've got in there and choose something that way. So we're going to assign the customer for the project. And then the in charge is going to be our staff member. So that's also going to be a link to another record, this time from the staff. And I'm also not going to allow linking to multiple records on here. That's your projects table. Last table we're going to create, and then we're going to dump some data in here, and then we're going to have some fun. All right, so the last one is called tasks. This is where we actually track the different tasks we have to do. And as you can see, we're going to have one table for all the tasks across all projects, all customers, and this is where you're going to see when we start playing with the different views how this can get really powerful because it makes it easy to analyze everything that's going on across the board, no matter who's in charge of it, which customer it's for, and which project it is. All right, so again, let's delete these extra fields. Okay, now this is where we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to come back to this one. The first field here is going to be the item, which is really going to be the description of the task itself, like onboard the client or whatever it is. Okay, now here we're going to do project, and this is going to be a link to another record again. This time we're linking to projects. Again, no multiple records, right? We would only ever want one project per task on something like this. Now we want the customer. But again, I don't want to have to do the same thing twice. So this is not going to be a link to another record. We're going to make it even easier. This is going to be what's called a lookup. Right? So we're going to look this up. Right? We're looking it up based on what's in project. And we're going to pull in the customer from there. Save. And you're going to see, again, this is where Airtable starts to get really powerful. Okay, here we're going to have assigned to. Okay, and this again is going to be a link to what's in staff. You could do allow link to multiple records on this one, because theoretically you could have more than one person assigned to something, but the way I would do it if it were me is to do it separately, to have one primary assigned to, which could be the in charge. Remember, we defined a field for the in charge, but doesn't necessarily need to be. So I'd have one primary assigned to, and then I might have another one here called team also linked to staff where I can list all the different people. And then we just need a due date for the task. And then, of course, that's a date-based field. And then we're going to add in what's called long text. And this is going to be details, a description of what the task is all about, right? There's one other thing we could add here if we wanted to, which would be a log where we can have people go in and you can create the space basically for people to write like detailed comments and then link it back to a task. I'm not going to do that for this purpose. If you want help with stuff like that, taking it that much deeper, we're already going pretty deep for free here. So come and hire me for some one-on-one and I can definitely work with you. And there's lots of ways we can take this and make it really cool in terms of the kind of information that you can provide. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the recording so I can fill this table up with some data. You don't need to see me enter data. I will show you one thing, actually, so that you can see it's something really cool about how you go about entering data. If I'm ready to enter in my first company name, right, in my customers list, instead of going across like we do in a spreadsheet, you can click this little guy right here and notice the pop-up shows up that says expand record or space. If I click on that, it gives me this nicely laid out data entry form that I can go through. It's just probably a little faster and easier to work with this. And notice we're in this view also, it shows you an activity log. And you can comment on this record over here so you can have a conversation with other people in your company about this particular record. In this case, it would be this particular customer, right? So that's a really cool thing to do when it comes to data entry. Again, I'm going to pause the recording. For you, it's going to be a second. For me, it's going to be a few minutes. I want to fill this in with some data to show you what you can do once you have data laid out in this. And really what we're going to get at is we're going to learn how to use the different views that you can access through Airtable, both in the standard forms as well as where you can create things like groupings and sortings and save those views by duplicating it and creating others so that in a sense you can create like reports in Airtable. So I've taken the time to fill in lots of data so we can play around, and I'm going to actually walk you through some of this because I want you to see how some of this works, especially in terms of the data entry itself. I showed you already when you go to the left of one of these items in the primary column, you'll see this little expand record dialog. Click that and it expands you in. It expands into this kind of data entry view, which is really nice. And notice now, because I've got data filled in, it's got links to other to records from other tables, right? So I can actually click around and drill in to these other records. It's really cool. On the right here, you'll see it shows that I edited it by adding in all this information. And of course, it's highlighting in green the things that I actually changed, right? And so again, this keeps track of, it's like a history of activity around this record, which is cool. And again, you can comment on it, and I can mention other collaborators who are in this Airtable base in order to get their attention, make sure they get notified. So really cool stuff there. In the staff, and I mentioned I was going to show you possibly show you the headshot. Let's say I am Abel, right? Abel McLeod. So what I'm going to do is I've got on my other screen a headshot. And I'm going to drag it in, and it's going to grab it and upload it. And the reason I want to show you this is one of the things you can do, especially with a table of this nature where you've got staff, the headshots can come in handy, especially if you have a bigger or growing company and you want people to be able to collaborate in here and kind of see who's who. When I switch this now to the Kanban view, I believe it is. No, the gallery view, sorry. Look how nicely that renders. So now you have these little cards that shows each person and their contact information, the basic information that's included. And when I click in here, it shows that there are 18 fields. I can actually reveal more fields if I wanted to. So over here I can say I want their phone numbers to show up. So unhide field there. That way the phone number shows up. And maybe that's all I need. So when I close out of here, you know, the phone numbers are right there, and that of course shows up for everybody. So the headshot thing, the fact that you can attach images, and you can attach multiple images to things, really, really cool feature. And now you've also started to see how it starts to change when you start accessing different views, right? And let's say I want this to be the main view that people see when they go in here. Over here I can reorder this. Right, and then I can switch back to the grid view if I need to, especially if I want to just quickly do some data entry type stuff in here. So that's the staff list. Projects, I filled in a bunch of projects. I think if I remember correctly, I did 2 for each customer in here, and then I added in tasks. Now I told you I was going to come back to this, and I didn't do it before recording, so I purposely waited on this. So here's the problem. Potentially is I have 3 different monthly bookkeeping projects, and I might want to do something similar to what I'm about to show you here with the project over here that I'm going to do over here in the task, because as you can see, it's hard to distinguish whose monthly bookkeeping project this is. Now, one thing that's cool is from here, if I want to know that, and I can tell here because it looks up the customer for me, right? But I can also click on this, and it actually, notice it's showing me that it's drilling me into the information where it came from over in the projects. And again, I can access that entire record here. Look, it even has the in charge with my headshot, right? So that's pretty cool. What we'll want to do, if need be, is, well, here's what we want to do for this purpose anyway. We want to create a formula, in a sense here, that combines the item that we have described, especially since the items can be the same, because we might be doing the same thing for the same kind of project for different clients, right? So we're going to combine the item that we've described here along with the customer, right? Because again, the projects can be the same. They're all called monthly bookkeeping. So we want to make sure this is going to be something completely unique. So I'll know it's onboarding for 2020 printing. And you'll see, I can always drill in further if I need to see which project it is, right? So what we're going to do is double click this column here, and we're going to change its type from a single line text to a formula. So when I type formula, I'll come in here, and I'm looking for concatenate. Airtable does a lot of the same exact functions that Excel does. So concatenate is a way to combine 2 strings of text. Now notice it's got my cursor flashing in between the 2 parentheses. It's small, so I'll zoom in on this. But what I'll want to do is click in there so I can kind of tell it what I want to use to build that formula. So the first thing is going to be the item, which is right here at the top. So I'm going to select that, comma, quote, space, dash, space, quote, comma, right? That's going to format it. So I have a dash with spaces in between before the next thing. And then we're going to choose customer. And I'll click save. Right? And if we really wanted to be sort of thorough, but it's going to make the names kind of long, we could also include the project. So this would actually say onboarding, monthly bookkeeping, 2020 Printing Inc. or 2020 Printing Inc. monthly bookkeeping. We might put that on the end. So if we wanted to, we could do it that way and click right into the formula and say again, comma, quote, space, dash, space, quote, comma, and then the project. Right? So now the name it's got pretty much everything in there. Right? Now again, some of these get quite long because I had the item quite detailed, right? Conference call with client to review and identify, blah, blah, blah. So you could also think in terms of shortening this to say conference call. And then remember, we have the details where we can lengthen this. So let's do that actually. If I click in here, I'm going to take everything except the words conference call out, Control X, right? And I'm going to put that in the details and paste that in. And then let's do that for all of these. For each of these others. right? Because now it makes a lot more sense. This is the item. What we're really doing is we're having a conference call with All American Travel regarding their financial model of 2019 projections job, right? And again, if I click that, it takes me into the data entry view, so I can really access everything in here. And again, notice how it tracks my changes, which again is really cool. But now let's get into the stuff that makes this super powerful, because now let's say my job at hand is I want to see some information, right? So the first thing I might want to know, and you're probably wondering already, is can I get a calendar view on this? And the answer is absolutely yes. In fact, it's one of the defaults. So first, let's double click this. We're going to call this view the master task list. Right, because it's just that. It's the grid view, it's the master task list. Now, if we come down here and we go to calendar, where we can choose which date field it's going to be based on. In this case, there's only the one. There's only the due date. And I click done. And notice what it's doing. It's showing me already the tasks. And notice it says build and balance. And, so these two, you can't distinguish. Hover your mouse over it, and you can see the whole thing. And this is what I mean. It's pulling from that first column to give us that description. That's why it's important to have something detailed in there so we truly know what it is. Notice it's also listing everything on the right. Okay, and we're looking at the month of August. We're looking at an entire month view. You might prefer a 2-week view, right? And let's go out one. And now you can start to see in a calendar view exactly what's going on and what's due which day. So you can get into the stuff that's due or coming due, and you can look at the status. So you can go in here, and I've clicked on it. I can click expand record. I can get in. I can even have the discussion here. I can make comments and say, hey, at so-and-so, what's the story with this? Are we going to meet the deadline for this task, right? And what's so cool about this is it also shows you all the stuff that this task is linked to. So here's the actual project, and it shows you that. So I can see the start date was September 1. The due date for the whole project is December 31st. I can look at my current date and see where I'm at. And so you have full context for everything you need. And here's who this is assigned to, right? If I want to go into the project, I don't even have to go into the project. I can see who's in charge. It's Abel. So I can go here and say at Abel, right? If Abel would have to be a collaborator in here. So really, really powerful stuff in terms of just accessing a calendar view like this, right? And I can double click this, or we can leave it and just call it calendar view, right? Let's go back to the master task list, because again, I want to start showing you some other ways where this gets really, really powerful. So we're going to now look at groupings, because let's say I just want to see the task based on who things are assigned to. So I'm going to click group. We're going to group first by assigned to. Okay, and right there alone, without doing anything else, already I have amazing context, because I can see what's assigned to Abel. And you see this little arrow here? I can click that to zip it up. If I right click, I can collapse all. So I can quickly get focused on one particular person, right? Chrissy's like my main manager. If you look back at staff, remember that Chrissy is my senior analyst, right? So, she's important. I may want to focus on her stuff. And again, I can go into any of these and access the full blown out view of any of these records, right? The other thing I can do is I can add filters, right? So I want to see anything that's either late or due today. So let's add a date filter, right? And then let's see due date. And let's look at some of our generic choices here. First of all, this matters, right? Is within, before, or after. So if it's later or due today, it's either before or on today. Is on or before. That's what I'm looking for. And I'll put in today's date. Actually, instead of putting today's date, I'll just put today. That way it'll always show me what's due today. And when I do that, I can see there's only one thing that's past due. It's assigned to Gwen. Right, this was due on February 28th, 2018. And it might be that I realize, oh yeah, she got this done a long time ago. So we're going to check that off. Okay, and then once I do any kind of a refreshing of the view, this would go away. Actually, it wouldn't, because it's the due date is in the past. It wouldn't go away. I'm going to have to do more to this to make it go away. I would have to add another filter that says and completed is unchecked, right? Now let's switch over, or let's duplicate the view. So this is how we kind of preserve that. I want to duplicate the view. What I should have done was duplicated the view before I did any of this, but that's okay. I'll just call this late or due today, right? So we've got this view named. We'll go back to master task list. Let's remove all my filters. I'll remove my groupings. Okay, and let's find that one that we marked complete. Let's uncheck it. And now when I go back to later due today, there she is. So this is really cool because this lets me focus. And if she hadn't actually completed it yet, I could go right into the task. I can mention her here and say, hey, Gwen, what's going on? Why isn't this done yet? Or did you just forget to check it off, right? Let's go back to the master task list. You can do multiple levels of groupings to effectively get reports. So what else might we do? I might want to do, first of all, again, let's, I thought I'd rename, oh, this one I named tasks. Here I named it master task list. Let's duplicate this view, right, to preserve the original. This one we're going to call by assigned to, let's do by project and assigned to. Okay, so we're going to group it first by project, then by assigned to. So the project is Airtable database build, assigned to Christy, and here's the task. Right here the project is the 2019 projections, assigned to Gwen, and here's the task. I'm looking to see if in any of these cases there's more than one task, but maybe not. I think the way I did this. Here's one. So here we have Project Boring, and Abel McLeod is the assigned to, and he's got 2 different tasks. So I might decide, I might look at something like this and decide, you know what, I really want, I don't want Latrice doing this. I want to assign it to Christy, right? So I can actually go into, this is one way to do it, go into here and find the assigned to. Right? Remove her, give it to Christy, and everything moves around. Boom. So really easy when you have this kind of structure to analyze and then move things as you need to. And obviously if I want to move it back, just as easy. Find the assigned to, remove Christy, and let's add Latrice. Back to it. Okay, so that's a really cool way to look at it, right? By project and assigned to. Let's do one more, and I think you get the idea, and I think that's a long enough video. So let's go back to my master task list. Let's duplicate the view, and we're going to call this by customer and project, right? Simple. Group first by customer, then by project. And it's giving me a warning that because I'm grouping it based on something that's sort of calculated, it's linked, I won't be able to add new records or move the records in this view, which is fine. It just means I would go back to the master task list to do anything like that. Right? But so now I can see if I have multiple projects for the same customer, I can see those very clearly in a view like this. So let's find an example. Actually, this is an example right here because for 2020 printing, I have the projections and I have the monthly bookkeeping. Boom. So this can be a really handy view. Again, I can collapse all and then re-expand if I want to just focus on one thing. Right? Expand all. We'll expand absolutely everything. But same idea. So here's All American Travel. I have an Airtable database build, and I have also projections I'm doing for them. So again, now, at this point, having seen what you've seen, and I've shown you the 2 main things to know how to use. The sorting is pretty obvious, right? If I want to sort something, let's go back to the master task list. Since I haven't shown you sorting, I assume it's pretty obvious, but let's add a sort, and let's sort it by due date. And then apply. And you can do multi-level sorts. So over here, I have, and look, I just revealed some things I haven't assigned a due date to. And actually, come to think of it, there's an idea. So we want to make sure, probably as a rule, that everything always has a due date associated with it. So let's duplicate this view. I'm going to call this no due date. Right? And then we're going to do a filter, actually, and say where the due date is, we want blank. Is empty. Done. Right, so now I can go through here and say, hey guys, hey, these are all Abel's. Abel's the one who's being a slacker here, so I can actually mention Abel in a comment and say, hey Abel, we need some due dates here, what gives, right? So again, and now you have all these views you've defined, by the way, and you can resort these. Like maybe I want later due today as like the first thing. Maybe that's the first thing. That is the first thing I like to look at in my own. The master task list, no due date might be something else we want to always analyze pretty, like right away. Make sure that, on a daily basis, no new tasks have shown up without a due date. And if they have, we want to get on that, right? So you can reorder these. Maybe we want the calendar as the first view that comes up, right? So you can change all of this. It's very customizable. It's one of the things I love about it, right? On the right, on the calendar view, we've got these guys. I've shown you that already. And then you can do the same kinds of stuff in some of the other views. Like if I go to my customers, right, and I didn't fill any data in for the referred by, but I could group it by referred by, so I can see who are the customers who referred to me and who are the people who referred them to me, so I can, do things, thank people, what have you. The projects list, right, I can group this by in charge. That might be useful, right? But first let's duplicate it. Get that out of the way. So this is going to be projects master. Okay, let's duplicate this view. And then we're going to call this projects by in charge. Okay, and then we're just going to group it by that. Okay, I'm going to delete the empty records. So now I can see Abel, Gwen, Chrissy has the most. So again, you can see how powerful this gets in terms of how you can sort of pivot around on the data and report on it and analyze on it and make decisions based on it. That, my friends, is a heck of a lot in a long free video. Sorry about the length, but I wanted to cover things fully and thoroughly on tracking customers' projects and tasks with Airtable. Of course, if you'd like more, if you'd like to go deeper, you know how to get in touch with me. Reach out to me through the website. If you're watching this on YouTube, always check the description of the video for a link over to the blog post where I've got the write-up. And of course, once you're there on my site, it'll be really easy for you to find the one-to-one training session, or one-to-many, where you can sign up for sessions with me, and I can walk you through anything that you can conceive of that you might want to use Airtable for in your business. I can help you build it. So give us a call, email us, fill out a contact form, any of the number of ways. There are many for contacting me. Use them, love them, enjoy them, embrace them. Get in touch with me. Let me help you. I can shorten the learning curve and help you get to where you want to be a whole lot faster than you'll likely be able to do on your own. As always, I hope you learned something here and had some fun along the way. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you on the web.